Jordan Peterson has a tendency to, how shall I put this, borrow other people's ideas. And by tendency, I mean compulsion. By borrow, I mean steal. As I document in The Devil and His Due, how Jordan Peterson plagiarizes Adolf Hitler, most of the doctor's philosophy is comprised of heard words, that is, other people's language, to which he has assigned his own incredibly abnormal meaning. Even Peterson's lecture titles are plagiarized. For instance, his biblical lecture, The Phenomenology of the Divine. The Carl Jung book that he cites and refers to most often is Ion, Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self. The word divine is probably an allusion to what Jung calls the divine child. In Peterson's first book, Maps of Meaning, he writes, quote, "The mythological hero rescues his ancestral father, languishing in the underworld, unites with the Virgin Mother, and produces the divine child, the divine hero who knows the ways of the enemy." End quote. Here's the passage again, this time with bits from Jung, which Peterson likely found, shall we say, inspirational. Peterson, quote, "The mythological hero rescues the ancestral father, languishing in the underworld, unites with the Virgin Mother." Jung, "The Blessed Virgin sat, awaiting the birth of the divine child, the true mother of the divine child." Peterson, "And produces the divine child." Jung, "You produce the divine child. Out of this process, which is like pregnancy, arises a divine child, a reborn God." Peterson, "The divine hero who knows the ways of the enemy." End quote. In Jung's Red Book, which Peterson has quoted in public, Jung said he was alerted to the divine child by the spirit of the depths, by which he meant the devil. Peterson made mention of Jung's spirit of the depths, but concealed that the spirit was that of Lucifer. He also failed to mention that the Red Book is occultic. Apart from lecture titles and other content, there's the matter of book titles. I suspect that Maps of Meaning came from Man's Search for Meaning, a book by Viktor Frankl about surviving the Holocaust. Frankl was an Austrian psychiatrist who spent time in concentration camps but evaded death. His parents were not as fortunate. His father died in the Terezin concentration camp, and his mother and brother were put to death in Auschwitz, where Peterson says he could have worked as a Nazi guard with, quote-unquote, happiness, specifying that he would have enjoyed taking Jews off trains and working them to death. Presumably, he would have enjoyed working Viktor Frankl's brother to death. Peterson is a psychologist who wrote Maps of Meaning, which he has said is largely about the Holocaust, and Frankl was a psychiatrist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, also about the Holocaust. Peterson cites Man's Search for Meaning in Maps of Meaning. If you think my analysis is simplistic, I would agree. Peterson's thought patterns are eminently simplistic, if not simple-minded or animalistic. At the University of Toronto, Peterson has discussed a compendium of Hitler's speeches called My New Order, while using a PowerPoint slide to display its cover. This is noteworthy because My New Order sounds like Beyond Mere Order, the original title of his next book, now called Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. Again, My New Order, Beyond Mere Order. The cover of the Hitler book, My New Order, is black. The cover of Peterson's soon-to-be-released book, Beyond Order, is black. From previews, it seems it will contain a lengthy passage about Hitler's brutal order police. If so, why would there be a description of Nazi death squads shooting women and children in a self-help book? But then, why did Peterson's last self-help book, 12 Rules for Life, feature a long quote from Mein Kampf? Such strangeness is not innocent happenstance. Rather, it's part of a vast, unmistakable, and highly disturbing pattern. Apart from Peterson's admiration for Carl Jung, he's extremely fond of Friedrich Nietzsche. In 12 Rules for Life, he introduces Nietzsche as the great 19th century German philosopher. And how did Hitler depict Nietzsche? As a great German philosopher. Peterson has said that the greatest book of all time is Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. Note how if we fuse Beyond Good and Evil with My New Order, we get something like Beyond Mere Order or Beyond Order. When Peterson taught his Maps of Meaning course at Harvard, which he said was mostly about 20th century atrocities committed by authoritarian regimes like Nazi Germany, Nietzsche was assigned reading, that is, Beyond Good and Evil, as well as On the Use and Abuse of History for Life. Think of 12 Rules for Life. Peterson informed his charges that reading Beyond Good and Evil would be their initiation ritual. This is interesting because he has also said, what the Nazis did so effectively was use ritual, right? In Beyond Good and Evil, the great German philosopher ruminates on the Wandering Jew, says Germany has amply sufficient Jews, and bellows, "Let no more Jews come in." In The Devil and His Due, I show how a section in On the Use and Abuse of History for Life was probably plagiarized by Adolf Hitler. Not in Mein Kampf, but Zweites Buch, or Second Book, which wasn't published until after the war. A course about the Holocaust could feature 2 works by Nietzsche, but why would it? Why wouldn't Peterson ask his students to read, say, a book about the Holocaust? That Maps of Meaning is about the Holocaust is a claim that, to most readers, should appear highly circumspect, given that the volume only touches on the event sparingly. Why would a book about the Holocaust contain so many favorable references to Nietzsche, who inspired Hitler? Why would it include a series of incomprehensible diagrams, a picture of a dragon wrapped around a cross, and whatever this is? Or this. Also, why is the Maps of Meaning cover comprised of the same colors as the German flag, black, red, and yellow? In Mein Kampf, Hitler writes of the black, red, and gold colors 6 times. He says that as a young Austrian, he sometimes wore the black, red, and gold colors to express loyalty to Germany. And why does the Maps of Meaning logo resemble a bent or fractured iron cross or swastika? Is this another coincidence? Am I reading into things too much? Peterson knows that Nietzsche inspired the Nazis. As he has said, Nietzsche's Superman was a concept the Nazis really, quote-unquote, pulled off. And keeping in mind that Nietzsche believed that the chief problem plaguing we Europeans was Jewish morality, note that Peterson has also said, quote, Nietzsche believed that the only possible way out of the problem would be for human beings themselves to become something akin to God and create their own values. That was the Overman, or the Superman, and that was one Nietzschean philosophy that the Nazis, I would say, took out of context and used to fuel their, superior man ideology. He laughs. And we know what happened with that. He tries to contain his laughter. That didn't seem to turn out very well, that's for sure. End quote. However, we can deduce that Peterson really believes that for Hitler, what happened did turn out well, because he has also said, quote, when Hitler died, he committed suicide in a bunker way down below Berlin while Berlin was on fire and Europe was burning. It's like, as far as I can tell, that was exactly, Peterson clenches and pumps a fist, what Hitler was after right from the beginning. He was interested in fire as a purifying agent. He's a fire worshipper in some sense, because if you look at the Nuremberg gatherings of the Nazis, they were spectacular celebrations, unbelievably dramatic and impressive, and they frequently featured fire, and fire's a purifying agent, end quote. Peterson's grand theory is that Hitler's war and genocide constituted an elaborate prank that the Führer and his goons, quote-unquote, pulled off. It was evil for the sake of evil, and all other interpretations are naive. Put another way, Peterson thinks Hitler tricked German citizens by promising order, but delivering chaos. When Peterson discusses the Nazis, he tends to mention order and orderliness. He has modeled goose-stepping in class, shouting, "That's order, order." For decades, he's been blathering about Hitler's order police, who he has repeatedly described as decent guys. As for the commander of Unit 101 of the order police, Wilhelm Trapp, Peterson has said he seemed pretty humane. Trapp supervised the deaths of 83,000 Jews before being found guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, information Peterson perennially omits. Peterson has said of the order police, quote, when the Nazis moved through Poland, they left policemen behind to maintain order, end quote, and Hitler referred to, quote, an organized squad of troops to maintain order, end quote. Peterson even treated a psychologically disturbed patient by prescribing a book about the order police and their atrocities, along with a book that involved the occult. Suffering from psychotic delusions, are we? This book about Nazi thugs slaughtering innocent men, women, and children should sort you out. Peterson told an audience in Australia that he had the capacity to be a member of the order police. On TV Ontario, Peterson said, quote, the reason that the Germans preferred Hitler to chaos was because they felt that the order that Hitler promised, as repressive as it was preferable to the chaos that was likely to ensue. And Hitler said, quote, order collapses and chaos ensues, end quote. Now let's listen to Peterson talking to his lobsters in Birmingham, England in 2018. I'll read the Peterson text in a higher voice and provide commentary in a lower one. Conservative types, like Peterson's lobsters, who are orderly are sensitive to disgust, kind of a judgmental disgust. And so I found that discovery extremely interesting when I was reading a biography of Hitler. I read this book called Hitler's Table Talk, and it was a very interesting book. It was a collection of his spontaneous speeches, diatribes, let's say, at mealtimes in the evening from, I think, 1939 to 1942. Actually, from 1941 to 1944. And they were recorded by secretaries, and so you got a sense of what Hitler thought about everything. And he was a very strange person. Peterson has described himself as a very, very strange person, because he was very high in trade openness, as are many serial killers. They're open to new experiences, like murder, which is actually a liberal trait. He was a very creative person, surprisingly enough. Note the praise. But he was also extremely orderly, and so a devotee of willpower, right? Willpower was an idea Hitler got from Nietzsche's Will to Power, which says, we Europeans must eradicate the problem of Judeo-Christian morality and become supermen or gods. So he was very proud of his ability to stand in the back of a car, going through the hordes of people that were worshipping him, like a god, and to stand like this for, 8 hours at a time. Hitler never gave the Sieg Heil for 8 hours at a time. He saw that as a single application of will. Peterson is boasting. And he was also obsessed with hygiene, right? He was certainly obsessed with racial hygiene. He bathed 4 times a day. I can find no evidence to corroborate this claim. And a lot of, I learned this. I took apart. What happened is, Hitler, what would you say, accelerated his purification strategies. Yes, it isn't that Hitler increased the rate of murder and genocide. Rather, he accelerated his purification strategies. Remember Peterson raving about Hitler using fire as a purifying agent. So, one of the things the Germans did right off the bat was to institute public health programs. And so they produced these vans that would go around and do TB screening. And so they were trying to get rid of tuberculosis. There was no such program, although they did use vans to collect people to be murdered as part of Hitler's T4 Aktion program of forced euthanasia, which resulted in as many as 300,000 deaths. Later, they used what were euphemistically called delousing vans, in which Jews were gassed to death. Finally, Hitler did not try to get rid of tuberculosis. He tried to get rid of the Jews, who he likened to tuberculosis. Seems like a good thing. Pathogen concern driven by disgust. And then the next thing they did was decide, well, might as well clean up the damn factories. Too many rats, too many mice, not enough flowers, too much dirt. According to historian Peter Hayes, Zyklon was used to delouse clothes, trains, and warehouses, but I can find no evidence of any pre-Holocaust government-orchestrated Zyklon campaign. And so, they had the Germans fumigate the factories to get rid of the vermin. They used Zyklon. Zyklon, I think, there were 2 variants. One Zyklon was used in the death camps, and the other was used as a general insecticide, pesticide. And so, that's where that started. So they started to clean up the factories, which seemed like an okay thing. But then they decided they were also going to clean up the mental institutions. And that was starting to push the envelope, let's say, a little too far, right? More euphemism. By abducting and murdering hundreds of thousands of innocent people, Hitler and his goons were merely engaged in a cleanup and starting to push the envelope. And that just went completely out of hand. He means it went beyond mere orderliness. And if you read what Hitler said, it's absolutely fascinating because he regarded the Aryan race as a body. That was his central metaphor, a body that was under assault by pathogens. So that's why he was always talking about purity of blood. And so his desire to eradicate wasn't driven by fear, it was driven by disgust, and it was a consequence of excess orderliness. It was a consequence of excess orderliness. Hitler went beyond mere orderliness. He ventured beyond order. And you can tell that too. I mean, if you look at how the Nazis arrayed themselves in their political displays, at Nuremberg, for example, which was this massive display area, huge grounds where all the Nazis would gather in perfect squares, right? Absolutely perfect. Thousands of people lined up in absolute precision. And then when they goose-stepped and marched, everyone was exactly the same. So orderliness gone mad. You know, an orderliness is actually one of the sine qua non of an industrialized society. And that's one of the things that makes that so terrifying, because it also means that part of what drove the Germans to their high levels of engineering excellence, for which they were absolutely renowned, not only in World War II, but certainly even now, was that orderliness, that unbelievable orderliness. And the thing is, it can get seriously out of hand. It can go way beyond mere orderliness. And so, that's a fascinating thing to know. It was one of the most shocking things I ever stumbled across as a social scientist. I really found it quite alarming, because there's a reason to be orderly and discuss sensitive. And the reason to be discuss sensitive is because you want to protect yourself from foreign pathogens, which is what Hitler told the Germans, and the pathogens, or parasites, were the Jews. You have to, because you'll die, you know? Do you see what Peterson is doing? He's explaining Hitler's rhetorical techniques, and then practicing them. And none of his lobsters bat an eyelid. Hold on, do lobsters have eyelids? Anyway, I'll come to the point. Jordan Peterson is not a self-help guru. He's a crypto-fascist. And it's not that orderliness goes mad, it's that Hitler, who is Peterson's hero, was mad. And Peterson is mad too. He's crackerjacks. Obviously, if you're a grown man who puts a picture like this in a book about genocide, you're not all there. In 12 Rules for Life, Peterson says order is white and chaos is black. This is unsubtle crypto-fascism, conveyed through and obfuscated by the medium of the self-help genre. Peterson's order represents Aryan order or Nazi order. His chaos signifies the Jews, non-whites, or the other. In 12 Rules, Peterson says openly that chaos is the stranger and the foreigner. In Maps of Meaning, he uses a diagram to show how order is equivalent to authoritarianism and fascism. Hitler conceptualized order as tribes, folks, and states, the home country, the cultural traditions of a great people, a train that departed punctually, the national flag, and living space. Peterson says that order is tribe, home, and country, the greatness of tradition, trains that leave on time, the flag of the nation, and living room. The title of Peterson's upcoming book, Beyond Order, is a covert allusion to genocide. Peterson told his students at the University of Toronto that Hitler brought order to Europe, but a little too much order. Again, Hitler went beyond order. The subtitle of 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, is also an allusion to genocide. The chaos is the Jews, or the other, and the antidote includes fire, or Zyklon B, the variant of hydrogen cyanide that Peterson failed to mention. In Zweites Buch, or Second Book, Hitler says that Jewry, or what he calls the chaotic negrification of the Aryan race, requires an antidote. The passage in which he makes this claim is likely plagiarized from Nietzsche's On the Use and Abuse of History for Life. Hitler says, quote, "Now, leading a nation from a deep and difficult illness is not a question of finding a prescription that itself is completely free of poison." Recall Peterson saying that Hitler compared the Jews to pathogens. Not seldom, it involves destroying a poison through an antidote. In order to eliminate conditions recognized as deadly, we must have the courage to make and carry out decisions which contain dangers in themselves. By eliminate conditions recognized as deadly, he means we must eliminate the Jews. He's speaking in a kind of code. Hitler, too, was a crypto-fascist. When Jordan Peterson talks about order gone mad, or going beyond mere order, he's expressing a wish. He would like to see order go mad again. To restate, it wasn't that order went mad in 1930s Germany. It was that Hitler went mad, possibly due to childhood trauma, that is, beatings he received from his father. He was diagnosed with the help of Carl Jung as having borderline schizophrenia. In Maps of Meaning, Peterson hints at having schizophrenia. Indeed, he talks about the disorder habitually, usually in ways that sound autobiographical. Jordan Peterson is a lunatic. He would have to be to give titles to his books that were latent references to the Holocaust. Thank you for listening. Please hit like and subscribe.